check into a hotel and you present your ID, do you ever think that you're giving away far more personal information than necessary? The hotel only wants to prove your identity, but now they also know your age, weight, home address, driver's license number, and more. As soon as you hand it over, you lose control. We're often asked to give away too much of our private data. Once it's out of your hands, that information can become susceptible to hacking, the sale of your personal data, or a barrage of unwanted ads. But what if there was an option to verify your personal information without giving away unnecessary, critical, private details? Verifiable Credentials, a pillar of Web 5, solves this. There are digital certificates of claims that are easily shared in a private and secure way. They can prove your legal name, age, ownership of an asset, or anything really. Verifiable Credentials limit the amount of data you share to only what's required, and they can't be tampered with or faked. Let's reimagine how identification could work. With Web 5, the government issues a verifiable credential that proves your identity and lives in what we call an identity wallet. So now when you check into the hotel, you present the front desk with a verifiable credential and share only what the hotel needs. This establishes that you are who you say you are, without giving away more personal information than you'd like. Verifiable Credentials make proving claims easier, more private, and more secure.
Hello everyone, and I'm actually going to switch my camera right now. We always have issues with my camera, so I'm going to start it later on. Let's see. I hope it doesn't mess up again. Okay, there we go. Awesome. All right, so hello everyone. Welcome. You're watching TBD TV. This is a weekly live stream where we chat with self-sovereign identity experts to learn more about the ecosystem. Today, we are going to be chatting with Kristy, particularly about how data analytics have basically transformed sports. I noticed that fan engagement uses it. Like there's so many different ways that people have used data analytics for sports, and it's been really impactful. However, I never thought about the side that it basically exposes athletes' privacy. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm really excited. We're going to go through here's just the agenda within the hour. We're going to go through introductions. We'll do a little quiz. We'll do a demo and some Q&A. Now, for our quiz, sometimes some of the questions are a little hard, so I have included a QR code with hints. So while we're talking, you can go ahead and use your phone to scan the QR code and get a little bit of a heads up on the questions. One thing I wanted to let you all know is that right now we're having a hackathon. So before I have Kristy introduce herself and before we start the conversation, I'm going to go ahead and play this video that gives you more information about the Africa Bitcoin Conference hackathon. Okay, Kristy, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm going to ask you one question before you introduce yourself. And this is just the icebreaker that I normally ask the guests, or like I ask a random question, and people who are in the audience, you can tune in and answer the questions as well. My question to you is, what's your favorite sport to watch during the Olympics?
That is a hard question. I like it all. Definitely track and field. Definitely women's gymnastics, especially this year. But my favorite, probably women's gymnastics so far. And
Me
Snoop Dogg. Anything with Snoop Dogg.
he's pretty entertaining this year. I liked when he was like doing narrations and stuff. But yeah, I've been loving the gymnasts, the Team USA, they're killing it. Um there's just so many people. I think there was a girl from Brazil, she's been killing it too. All right, so I did my research on you, and I know that you have a background in sports law, and I'm curious, like, what made you so passionate about athlete data rights? Where did you happen to be like an athlete yourself in the past, or was there something that sparked this initial interest for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So this started almost a decade ago, exactly a decade ago. I have always enjoyed watching sports. I've played sports, but I wasn't like a D1 college athlete in the NCAA or, just my own. I noticed you also like to stay fit and go to the gym. I'm kind of the same, I just like to push myself and take care of my body and see what I can do. And then about a decade ago, I had an opportunity to do a master's of law degree in sports law and business. And my instincts just told me I needed to be where law, business, tech, and sports meet. And so I started talking with people about where that was, and they couldn't tell me. And when I say people, I mean attorneys in the sports industry working for the leagues and the teams and the players associations. I started asking, do you know about tech sport or sports tech law? And nobody knew what I was talking about. And right there, I just thought I need to jump on this and figure out what this means. And what I was able to do over that time, over the course of a couple of years, was take my corporate law experience working in a variety of industries from health tech to consumer products to medical devices and pharmaceuticals to financial services, where I had done a lot of intellectual property work. So patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, publicity rights, which a lot of people in college sports now call NIL or name, image, and likeness. And then I'd also had a lot of experience in transactions and contracts and doing deals and licenses on technology and intellectual property. In financial services, I also worked a lot with our development team in developing new platforms and products for bank customers. So I had a lot of experience there. And then I also had a lot of experience in consumer privacy protection. Because in the banking industry and other industries, with HIPAA, there are just a lot of laws governing personal data. And so when I was in fintech over the last decade or so, or a little bit longer, I guess, uh, blockchain was starting to be talked about, but it wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't fully developed. And I thought in the back of my brain, eventually maybe I'll have to build some type of blockchain solution to manage athlete data rights. So that's kind of my background. And then when I did the sports law and business degree, I started learning about where the sports industry was going in the future. They wanted to offer virtual reality games to fans. They wanted to have more fan engagement, applications like mobile apps. Fantasy sports was really popular. And this was back in 2014 when I started that master's program and finished it at the end of 2015. And within, within that time, they had already started, the leagues and teams had already started looking at utilizing what is called next gen stats in the NFL, or using tracking, geo-tracking, and other technology, sensor technology on athletes to indicate where they were on the field, their speed, their direction on the field. So that was already starting to happen a little bit. And also Whoop armband and actually Jawbone. Some other wearable tech was being used in the NBA. And I just could see that there was going to be kind of a crash course, a collision, so to speak, of this tension between privacy rights, intellectual property rights, utilizing athlete data to help the athletes and teams perform better individually and together. and then push it into these fan engagement applications. And that was even before sports betting was legalized. The US Supreme Court opened the door for sports betting to be legalized in 2018 when they overruled PASPA. And then shortly thereafter, the US sports leagues were ready to go and optimize sports wagering. They tried to promote a licensing fee or an integrity fee to essentially a kickback, or payments for them for this type of athlete data that they would be able to provide that would help sports betting, people who bet on sports, engage more with football and make better predictions or better bets. So I'll pause there, but that's really kind of where this all started. And and I need to add, I apologize, I need to add that in my research during my master's program, what I found was under the law, typically athletes were not afforded much ownership of their name, image, and likeness, their video. For example, there are lawsuits about athlete data or stats, really traditional stats, and video used 10, 20 years after they played. And when the players sued the league saying, hey, I didn't authorize this, the leagues generally won. And so I wanted to make sure that athletes were treated equitably, that they were compensated for their IP rights or intellectual property rights, that their privacy rights were respected. That's a little bit more of a challenge under the First Amendment freedom of speech rights that we have in the US, because athletes are public figures, and we as the public have a right to know things about them from an entertainment perspective, an education and information perspective. So they don't have as much privacy rights as the rest of us do. And when you're talking about monetizing and using athlete data, now we're with sensor technology, video, and other technology and AI, we can know more about their biometrics, their biomechanical movements, their sleep, what they put into their body, their sexual activity. And there's not a lot of governance around, ethics. There are some bioethics, but there are not a lot of laws or ethics. And I don't promote a lot of laws. I promote this is happening. So how do we make it happen in a way that protects the athletes and allows them to have a stake in their own data and the monetization of their data?
Yeah, I love it. I love all that information and I can relate with it as well. I wrote a lot of questions, so I'm sure I'll be able to like reel back or get deeper understanding of some of the things that you brought up as well. But like I relate to what you said around like the 2014-ish time where athlete data started getting used more often, because I remember that's when I was interested in. Oh, if you don't mind, I can mute you real quick just because the echo. But yeah, that was when I was getting more interested in getting into tech. And one of the things that had like, and I wanted my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, to get interested in tech too. And one of the things that like caught him was they were like, yeah, we're like tracking like how basketball players are, like their performance and stuff like that. And he was like, that's cool. That's something I want to do. So I relate with it, or I remember that time in a way. Okay, my next question, I think a question that I had written down was like, before we do a deep dive into all of the challenges, why did the industry move towards this? Like, what are some of the benefits of sports analytics? We will talk about like why it's not great for them, and you did kind of touch on that, but why has it become so prevalent in the industry?
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, really, it's so sports leagues and teams are always looking at how they can better engage fans and increase dollars, whether that's money spent on tickets, or money spent on fantasy sports or sports betting. Basically, it's how do we drive fans, one, to have a better experience, and to spend more money essentially on the sport. And so, of course, there's been this huge shift over the last decade in society and social media, and really athletes treat sports as something they definitely want to do, but kind of a next step into their whole career, and they're investing in themselves and the business propositions that they want to put forward after they play sports. Athletes, of course, now can and want to connect more with their fans directly. So it's kind of been this whole machine. I think is a lot of factors contributing to this. But at the top of that pyramid is the leagues, teams, unions, universities, athletic conferences, and college sports, really wanting to engage with fans, figuring out how to do that with next gen fans, and creating a commodity or a sports broadcast that today's viewers and fans want to see. So they've been trying to curate that over the last several years. And now, as I would say, along with that, when they're looking at the capabilities of data collection on athletes, they were looking at, well, how can we utilize this? And the NFL was really a first adopter in this space. The NBA followed closely, and then of course MLB, NHL, and MLS, soccer. All were kind of following, like, how can we utilize this data? And initially it was, how do we help the athletes perform better? Because if the athletes perform better, then the game will be better and the game will evolve. And, we can attract more fans and engagement that way. And the sports scientists for teams really at first weren't sure about sensor and other wearable and other types of technology. There's, of course, sensors installed in stadiums, in arenas, in sports equipment. So I'll give you one example in the NFL in particular. They utilized, starting about a decade ago, RFID tags, and those are traditionally used in tracking packages. So if you order something from Amazon and you're wondering where it's at when it comes to your house, it's the same type of technology. It's a sensor that is installed in the shoulder pads for NFL players, and it would show geo-tracking information, and that information would then be broadcast to an analytics team, and they would parse it and then put it into a kind of a pretty format that looks good on screen, and then they could share that information during a live broadcast. And that was kind of the beginning. And the sports scientists wanted to see, so all of these sensor tech and other sports tech companies emerged to try to show how they could optimize athlete performance. But the sports scientists wanted to see if that was proving out. So there was a period of time, up to 5 years, where the sports scientists were vetting different technologies and saying, does this really tell the story we want it to, or is it factual? Is the data actually proving what the sports tech companies are saying it's proving? So we had kind of that phase. And now that that's kind of been fleshed out, and we know that there's some real leaders in the space, for example, Whoop Armband, who has some really interesting videos if anybody wants to go check it out, for Sha'Carri Richardson, who just ran in the Olympics. It shows how she utilizes Whoop and their sensor technology to improve her performance and focus on sleep, strain, or load. How much can your body withstand in your training, and what types of training you should do, when you need to rest, when you need to recover. Patrick Mahomes, quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, I think 3 times champions in the last 5 years. He utilizes their tech. And so there's some interesting videos out there about what types of data is collected from these elite athletes, and then how it can be used to help them perform better. And then, of course, because in sports there's a business side, they also want to start utilizing that to, like I said, engage fans. And I can share a visual of that in a moment. Just a screenshot essentially of how the NFL in the past year is utilizing this athlete data, and developing and utilizing machine learning to develop technology that really can help expand how they improve the game, engage fans, and help athletes perform better. They have kind of a threefold mission with this athlete data and AI.
That's so interesting. I think. I'm gonna mute you again. That's all good. Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it's interesting how you explained how they started out, where it was like they initially just wanted to help athletes perform better. I remember, and you mentioned Whoop. I remember I wanted to work there at one point because it's headquartered in Boston, where I live, and I was like, "This is so cool." The only problem is I didn't know Java at the time, and they gave me like a Java take-home test, and I was like, "Oh no!" But yeah, I think it's interesting how they started out with wanting to like help improve, but over time it kind of changed into something else. And so like I think you mentioned the problem a little bit, but could you briefly just go over that again? Like what is the problem are the biggest risk or concerns for athletes to be sharing or not having control over their personal data? I think one thing you even mentioned was like their sexual health and stuff like that. That's really weird. I wouldn't want that out there.
Yes, exactly. So I'd like to share a couple slides real quick to, to answer that. And so can you see my slides? Do I need to?
We can see it.
You can. Okay, excellent. So the problem here is, I'm going to skip down here. So first of all, leagues, teams, players, associations, and universities are collecting and monetizing athlete data, including their health information, athlete biometric data, player tracking data, and other performance data. And so the data owners, which are the athletes, have proprietary and exclusive data to protect, but it's usually collected on behalf of the team or the league, and they're the ones who are really monetizing the sport. And so the athletes stand to lose, have their privacy rights eroded. If they are disclosing, for example, a predisposition for a genetic condition or a chronic condition, or if they've had an injury or if they've had a surgery, they disclose that. And then the analytics team will determine, well, how viable of an athlete is this? And that could negatively impact an athlete's game time, like how much time they get in game to play. It can impact their contract value, how much they can earn. It can impact their career life cycle for how many years they can play. And from a revenue and a reputation standpoint, it could have a negative impact. Primarily if there's information that's breached or leaked out there without their consent or without their knowledge, they suffer financial and reputational loss from that. And there's an example of that in the European Union. Project Red Card is a class action lawsuit where professional football players or soccer in the US are suing because some of their data was utilized in sports betting without their consent. So it is a very real downside risk that they accept. Does that fully answer your question?
Definitely. And we even got a comment here that says, wow, that's wild to know that that's the information that's being collected. So, what would I know? It is it's really wild. I think that did answer the question. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, well, just to expand on that, each of these parties in the athlete data ecosystem are subject to risk. For example, a league is collecting data from an athlete. They have to make sure they have the athlete's consent. There are other legal requirements. And then when the league or the team engages a data collector on their behalf, they run the risk of a data breach through that third party. The third party runs a risk of perhaps the athlete did not consent to this. And so, of course, that's why we have contracts. And me having a legal background, I can identify the risks. My career has been all about maximizing opportunity and revenue generation while mitigating risk and trying to reduce risk as much as possible. And so that's what this solution is born of, is how do we not go through all of the litigation and fighting all of this out? How do we instead go straight to everyone makes money? And so we have a model where we have these stakeholders, and I'll identify the primary stakeholders: the athlete, the team or league. Usually a players association is involved, and then your data collection and analytics and dissemination partners. And then you have your content creators, usually people or organizations that a league or team wants to partner with, and they'll utilize this athlete to promote that. So for example, with the NFL Players Association, they partnered with Whoop, and Whoop did a deal with Patrick Mahomes where they would track his data and utilize it for marketing purposes and also show the efficacy of their product. And so, more and more things like that are happening. So you have usually at least four stakeholders in the space. All of them have an opportunity to receive revenue, and all of them have some risk. So our solution puts the power in the hands of the athletes and incentivizes all of the stakeholders to do the right thing, comply with the laws, and also reap the rewards of that and mitigate risk at the same time.
Wow, that's awesome to know. I didn't even think about content creators, um, like being like I mean, yeah, I see them, but I didn't even think about them being a party within this. Before we pause for a little bit of audience engagement, there was another thing I wanted to mention. Oh, it was that your background or and getting to this space kind of reminds me of another guest I had on who he has a law background, but in I think it was like music law or something like that, and he was helping like songwriters protect their data and publishers and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. I'm going to highlight a couple of comments, then we're going to get into the quiz, and when we come back we'll talk about your demo and how we're using verifiable credentials to or how you're using verifiable credentials to protect athlete data, because I think it's clear and it's like why this is a problem, and it's a wonder why no one has actually put in the effort. Like I haven't heard about people saying like, "Oh, I want to protect athlete data." Um, we have a comment from Tech NFA that says Eddie Curry, an NBA player, refused to take a DNA test and provide the results to his team and was so traded to another team back in 2005. Oh, I didn't even know that. And then Michael mentioned, hi, Michael. I think this was from before when we were asking about Olympic sports, and he mentioned that breakdancing is his favorite. I didn't know that that was a thing. All right, so what we're gonna do, y'all, I hope you scanned the QR code for your hints. We're going to go into a quick quiz about verifiable credentials. Some questions may be familiar, some of them might be a little bit newer, but have fun. All right, we're back, and I kind of want to hear from you, like how you're using verifiable credentials to help athletes own their data. And I don't know if you want to jump into your demo, following that. Oh, I forgot you muted yourself, or I might have muted you.
We're good. Okay, you can hear me. So just going back to these slides real quick, just to put a little more color around the problem and why verifiable credentials. I'll be honest, when I started this a few years ago, I was working with a software development house and we were looking at different ways to do this. And as I mentioned, at some point I thought I'd have to go back to blockchain, but I thought adoption would happen sooner than it has. And I started working in blockchain and working with verifiable credentials because it seemed forward looking. So this slide you see, we're trying to resolve issues with trust, privacy, security, access, as well as the intellectual property compliance and the privacy compliance function. And we're trying to comply with laws that are still being made. We know that the most stringent privacy laws are in the EU and California in the US. There's a federal privacy law that's been introduced in the US this past spring. And then we know that the European Union had their AI Act implemented this year, and the US is trying to follow suit. Also in the EU, there's a digital wallet um, program that's going to be implemented, and they have a Digital Services Act All of those things are going to impact this. And as technology continues to expand, innovation grows, and new ways to utilize athlete data and engage with sport and athletes increases, we need to have a forward-looking approach. And so that's the why behind decentralized identity and verifiable credentials. Is this is forward-looking, this is the future. And so I'll pause there and I'll show you kind of what we're working on. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, we're talking about athletes that are having their data utilized, but I just wanted to share this really quick. This is my own screenshot, my own photo. Can you see it?
Yeah,
It's two individuals. Okay, so when I was watching the Olympics last week, I noticed you can see Henry Rivera. It shows his beats per minute or his heart rate. So that is Hensley Rivera's parents while she's doing a routine on uneven bars. And so I honestly don't know who provided the heart rate information, but the fact that now we are hooking up parents during a competition and we know their biometrics, to me, I didn't anticipate that. Yeah, I did not anticipate that, but very entertaining for me. But let me share with you the tech that we're working on. So I'm going to refresh here. Okay. You can see my screen okay?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, so what I might do so that I don't have, I was having a little technical issue earlier. So what we have is this platform, and then we also have a mobile app. And so rather than trying to get the mobile app to work again on my screen share, I'll probably just share it on my mobile, and hopefully you can see that. So we'll get set up here. Okay. I'm going to do some refresh. So we have 3 parties, and let me just share who those, well, there's technically 4 in this example. So we have the data collector and analytics service. That is someone, that could be a WHOOP, for example. That's someone who's collecting the data on the athlete, either by the athlete's choice or the team and league want that, and they want that data. Then we have perhaps a professional athletics association. So that would be the case in any pro league in the US. But if, this also applies to amateur sports and college sports. And so this could be the university or an athletic department or an athletic conference in college sports. Anyone who is basically who the athlete plays for. And then we would have another party, a data aggregator, or this could be a content creator and not just an influencer, but it might be, that one of the pro leagues wants to partner with BetMGM and roll out a program to advertise for sports wagering, and they want to utilize the athlete data somehow, or a service providing athlete data, they want that provided to an odds maker or a sports wagering firm that's creating new prop bets, and they want to incorporate athlete data into that. It could be someone, for example, Major League Baseball has a mobile app that's augmented reality. Let me think about this. I think it's augmented reality. So I, as a fan, can go in and hit off of a pitcher, my favorite pitcher, and they utilize biometrics and body mechanic data to make that as realistic as possible. And so that's what we're talking about with this data aggregator. It could be anyone who wants to use the athlete data for their own purposes to monetize it. So in our platform, we essentially have this desktop application that interacts with these 3 parties, and then also a separate mobile app that I can just kind of show you right here. Can you see that? Kind of, to some extent? Okay. So what we'll do here, the Sports League has engaged this data collector and analytics service to collect data on the athlete. Ty Jackson, for example, our athlete is Ty Jackson. So we can choose from different credentials. One might be a recovery score and the things that are considered in what an athlete needs to do to recover. So we would issue that credential. No, I look like I might be having an issue. I apologize. Sometimes it's, until we get the tech perfect. So we'll choose our recovery score credential, and we're going to issue that. And with my mobile app, You can kind of see me here on the screen. I have the opportunity to scan a code. Can you see that?
Yeah. You got the
So
QR
that's
code. Yep.
yes. And so then I just use my mobile app to scan that QR code. And then it sends me, well, it gives me the option to select what data set I'm going to send. So I can go and search for a player. We're going to choose Ty Jackson and how he performed in the Super Bowl last year in 2023. You can see he's assigned a recovery score based on his heart rate variability, respiratory rate, how much sleep he got, how much quality, the quality of his sleep. And then the device type in this situation is W for wearable. And so we'll say, yes, we want to send that to Ty Jackson to confirm that that is his, that's his data. It's authentic. We're verifying, one, that it's his data, and two, in a separate step, that he's authorizing its collection and use. So then you can see again, my phone, can you see that I have the option? It sent me
I think
a credential. It sent me a new credential that I can view. And it shows it's a recovery score sent to me today, and it has all the same stats that we just saw on the screen. And then the athlete can go through, review those, and either accept or decline. Either say, yes, that's accurate, or no, it's not. Yes, I authorize it. No, I don't. Those types of questions. So we're showing this on a one-to-one basis. Of course, this cannot happen. It would be much too slow. So we will do this thousands of times over in a very short period of time, because in sports, you need real-time data for a number of reasons. One, the game is happening in real time. The broadcast is happening in real time. And in sports wagering, if you're going to offer sports wagering, you essentially have to make that wager available to all of the people at the same time, so that you can maintain integrity in sports wagering. And that's another reason we're doing this, is this type of data, and being able to verify and essentially create a chain of title to this data, and see who did what when, who had access to it, and what the athlete and the athlete's representatives authorized. Create this viable data commodity that can then be monetized. And nobody's doing this. And so that's one reason we're very excited. And just a quick mention here, it holds true in traditional sports, but also in esports. Competitive online gaming, you can collect data such as mouse clicks, how many mouse clicks, and use eye tracking technology to see where a player's eyes are moving, to determine their ability to make decisions, make them with quickness, kind of like a quarterback on a team. You can utilize that type of data in competitive online gaming. And there's a lot of betting already occurring on competitive online gaming. And so I argue that this athlete data in esports is even more valuable than in traditional sports, because so much of it happens that you can't observe with the naked eye. And one other consideration, a couple of use cases we're working on is in college sports. There's been a lot of change in the last 2 to 3 years. Athletes in college can now make money from their name, image, and likeness rights. And so we're working with a major university right now to try to put together some use cases for athletes to utilize a tool such as this, so that all of the stakeholders that are involved can comply with the laws required, not just for name, image, and likeness and other intellectual property rights, but these other privacy rights that we've talked about. And then also, just in the last month and a half, there was a case called House versus NCAA that combined a number of lawsuits that were filed by college athletes who wanted to be compensated for their playtime. And there was a settlement, and there will be almost $3 billion. It's $2.8 billion that will go towards college athletes who have already played, and they will be compensated. And a model is being determined to how do we compensate these college athletes going forward. And in college, you also have to comply with Title IX, which is a federal law that says there needs to be equity in sports in the college. And so, how do you equitably compensate, for example, a football player on a college team and a female swimmer that plays or performs for the same university? Creates a lot of challenges. And so we're hoping to utilize this technology to help determine the factors in this model, this new model that's emerging, to compensate athletes as well. So it has a lot of application. Okay, so now that you know the stakeholders and a little bit more about the issues, so now that I have this recovery score, I can go ahead on my phone, my mobile app. I don't know if you can see it, but it has the opportunity to accept. So I accept and I say, yes, I verify that that data is from me. I acknowledge and authorize its collection and use. And then you can see I have, in my little wallet here, you can see I have a recovery score. It keeps track of that, and I can go into it at any time and review that and kind of track who did what when. So then we would say that my university or my team or my professional association wants to then utilize that and license it, or they need permission also to utilize it. So then I go through the same process. I scan their QR code. I get another credential where they are asking me to verify the data and authorize it for their use, for the purposes of their use. And they may partner with Genius Sports. And so here you can see we're going to select a recovery score again. We're going to verify that. And that could then be utilized in a broadcast. It could be utilized by Genius Sports, who is the sports data partner for a lot of universities and athletic conferences. It's also the sports data partner for the NFL. And then you would just simply accept it, authorize it for your team, league, players association. And this is all kept track of in your wallet, of course, and you can go and track any of these at any time and see what you've authorized in your wallet. And then once the university or the athletics association or the team decides they want to monetize your athlete data, well, that's when we go to this data aggregator or another data partner. And of course, we simply repeat the process.
Yeah.
We scan a QR code on the mobile app. We scan it here. I see as an athlete in my wallet, I can review those stats and authorize them at this point for sharing for a whole new purpose, perhaps a virtual reality game.
Mm.
And that's
This
how it
is
works.
so cool. Yeah, this is so cool where you have the control. Like, I mean, that's what we've been talking about, but where as the athlete, you have the control over do you want to share this with a college, or do you want to share this with a professional association, or do you want an app or content creator or whatever to choose it? And I think we've seen, like, if people have been following along with this live stream over the past couple of months, we've seen people use verifiable credentials. And I think, to me, this is the most like interesting use case. We do have a quick question here from the audience, and they said, given the sensitivity of geolocation data, particularly in the context of athlete tracking and performance analysis, how do you ensure the secure handling and privacy of this data within the platform? How do you, specifically, they're saying, how do you leverage and manage control access to geolocation data? I think they asked this before you did the demo. Oh, wait, I muted you. Sorry. Just because of the feedback. Sorry.
Because we don't have to. Oh,
No, you're good now. You're good now. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. The lovely thing about this technology, of course, is we don't have to keep any of the data in the blockchain. This is a thin layer, of course, that works with, integrates with existing solutions. And so what we do, I also consult and provide professional services and help organizations, and primarily sports organizations and athletes, determine what their best practices should be in their governance, and then we can apply that in a technological scheme. And so they will decide, and really they truly already have with geolocation data, because there are so many laws around that. Their data partners, or their partners that build for them their geo-tracking data applications, they manage that. We simply just have to provide authentication and verification. They kind of track that on their side, and any other data they hold on their side. We're just providing functionality to kind of check all of the compliance boxes. So rather than doing it old school by paper and cross your fingers that everybody keeps their promises, that no, now we can validate all of this in real time on a person by person basis. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for me too, and I can relate that to kind of what the sports law guy that came on was saying, where it's like he basically just uses a verifiable credential to like have proof that like, yeah, this person wrote this song, this person was the publisher. No one can like change their mind or lie or be like, oh, I was in the room at that time and I should receive compensation. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Um, as we're winding down, I have maybe a few more questions left, and then we'll jump into like a little game I have, and then we'll end. Um, but one of the questions that I had was, I think we talk about this a lot in the sense of like, or we were talking about this a lot in the sense of like professional athletes, but I wanted to see your thoughts, and I think you talked about it a little bit with the parents of like how has this data been used for people who are not professional athletes, like just regular everyday gym goers who might be using like Whoop, or maybe even like I don't know if kids are using stuff like this. Just curious from your perspective.
Yeah, or Fitbit or Apple Watch. Well, they're all very good at, being compliant with the laws, from what I'm aware of. And honestly, I'm glad you asked about this because that was another motivator for me is this has a trickle down effect, of course, to consumers like us, consumer fit tech, people like me, they don't care what my data is. I'm not going to monetize that, maybe one day. But what is the impact on consumers? And uh, and so for now, the data is relatively secure, but it's all based on the laws. And in the US, we kind of have a patchwork of privacy laws. They're not super robust. In some states, we have some biometric data privacy laws, like Illinois, Texas, Washington. And so that's a whole other thing that would take probably an hour to talk about the lawsuits that have happened there. One famous lawsuit, just briefly, was against a consumer from Illinois. They sued Snapchat. There's been one against Facebook, which is now Meta, of course, but they were utilizing facial recognition technology without consent. So the companies that are truly, collecting your data are generally aware of the laws around that. They also do have lobbyists that are always lobbying in their favor, of course, to collect more data and utilize it for their purposes. And so I would say that in general, companies are trying to comply with the laws and keep our personal data secure. However, there was also an SEC summit at the beginning of this year where the SEC or FTC, sorry, I need to go back and double check. I apologize. Um, FTC, where they were talking about how they allowed companies such as Facebook and Snap and Instagram, and, kind of these early social companies to self-govern, and that didn't work. It kind of got away from them, and it did not allow enough consumer privacy. And so they're not going to make the same mistake with AI. And as AI and machine learning it's proliferating at a huge rate, that they are cracking down on that immediately and not allowing any self-regulation, no self-governance really. And so that is what will be interesting to see as AI is incorporated into all of our everyday solutions, including things that we use, our wearable tech, and the impact that that will have. Because of course, with AI, you need people's data to train your models. And so what does that look like going forward? And that there's been a huge amount of focus and discussion on that over the last year. I know everybody knows that, but especially in the last few months where, like I said, the European Union implemented their AI Act. And then, in fact, next week I'm going to a meeting to discuss all of this as well, the impact that AI is having on all of this. So if we don't try to contain it and do the right thing now, it kind of gets out of hand and consumers can be damaged. And so U.S. government is trying to prevent that. Like I mentioned, I also want practical solutions like this. One, the law is slow to keep up with technology. And two, it can't solve for everything. So education and good tools are also part of this equation.
That makes so much sense, and I think, um oh, there was something on my mind while you were talking, and it just went right out of my mind. Oh my god. Well, I hope it will come back, but I'll ask you one last question before we switch into the fun questions, and it's like, how do you see oh, it was about AI. I remember now. Like, that's, like, what had helped me or encouraged me to actually look into the space of, like, owning your data and stuff like that, because I think AI is really cool. I'm excited by it, but I do think there needs to be some type of limitations on like how much data it's taking from people and without their consent. But my question to you, my last question to you is like, how do you see the landscape of sports analytics and athlete data rights evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, there will definitely be more use for the data, especially for sports wagering and prop bets. Those are the bets that you can make in game, and kind of decide how many yards is that guy going to throw for, or how many 3-point shots is this guy going to make a regular basket or 3-point shot, those types of things. And then also, like I said, with managing sports integrity, to make sure everything is done in compliance with laws. I think those two areas will grow a lot. College sports also, this technology and the use of athlete data. First of all, we've kind of just gone through the phase of creating elite athletes, utilizing this data to help athletes perform better, help teams perform better. There's been a little bit of fan engagement, but I think that's going to explode, how we engage fans and use this data to engage fans. Then also in the college space, college space right now in the US is like the Wild West. And so the model is shifting. The NCAA seems to continually they're kind of choosing the wrong side of the fight and having to calibrate. And so what that means going forward for college athletes is they'll be able to be paid for name, image, and likeness rights, publicity rights, essentially, for advertisers to use their face or, whatever, their voice, to promote a product. And then we also will have athletes being compensated for playing for or for a team or a university. And so this provides a lot of opportunity for athletes to share their data or find innovative ways to utilize their athlete data to generate revenue, for the universities to do the same, the athletic conferences to do the same, for all of their data partners to do the same. But you have to do it in a lawful way. And it's better to just get on top of it now and use a best practice now instead of mitigating risk, going through litigation and possible government regulation or intervention, by government. So we don't want to go down that path. So I see a data market emerging in youth, college, amateur, and professional sports in the US for certain, the EU, and globally. A new data market where the market may be valued not only on the athlete and how elite they are, but what you can bet on, just fantasy sports, whatever virtual or X reality, augmented reality products, whatever truly our creativity is the only limit. So however we want to utilize this, a data market will emerge, and a new governance structure will emerge. More laws probably will be enacted, definitely more robust fan engagement products in both traditional sports and esports. And so the next 5 years for sure will be very interesting while this is kind of settling out. And we're trying to provide structure and allow innovation and also protection of the athletes and all the stakeholders, generate revenue. I always say get business and compliance done in real time. Get your business done, make money, and get your compliance done in real time. That's what it's about as the market emerges.
That's so exciting. I can't wait to see this new data market and how it ends up looking. All right. So thank you for taking your time to chat with us. Thank you too to the audience for engaging and tuning in. We'll just do to wrap. I usually do this little game. It's just for fun, and then we'll close out for the rest of the day. So basically, all that happens is I give a statement. It's not a statement I believe. It's like lightly controversial, nothing crazy that will like implicate you. And then you do like a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're like, yeah, I agree or I don't agree. The first thing, it has nothing to do with tech. It has like it's just random. Right. First thing is I prefer subtitles when watching movies or TV shows. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Thumbs down. Interesting. I always have the subtitles on. And I'll highlight the audience as well. They said that thumbs up. I have bad hearing, so I'm like, I need to see it. Okay. Other one is aliens exist. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. Okay, interesting. I don't know if it's true or not. I think I will say thumbs down. I don't know. And then my last one is it or sorry, it's not a question, it's a statement. It's okay to wear mismatched socks. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. Me too. I don't have the time. Is there any last minute things you wanted to say before we completely like leave for the rest of the day?
I just thank you for this opportunity. I love sharing. I love seeing what other people are doing in this space. I love this community. It was a little bit of a learning curve for me coming from legal, where you're used to thinking you want to wrap up all your intellectual property rights rather than share to the community. So it's been a great learning curve for me, and the community is awesome. And I'm just grateful for what you're doing. It's amazing. It's so helpful. And for all of the people in this space contributing, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I thought this was pretty interesting, like just learning about the entire landscape. I want to let people know that on Tuesday, August 13th, we're doing a live stream to talk about the different decentralized identity standards that have been updated recently. And then on Friday, August 16th, we're talking with Polygon/Privado ID to talk about monetizing credentials. And Tech NFA said, great discussion, learned a lot. See you all next stream. Bye.
We announced it. TBDEX 1.0 SDK is now out.
TBDEX is an open protocol that makes moving value around the world much more efficient and streamlined. We're solving this problem with TBDEX by building a standard open source protocol that anyone can use for free and plug into.
We're super excited to have developers be able to start looking at this technology and start implementing it. We've put together a new financial protocol that we believe can fundamentally revolutionize the way that we think about transmitting value around the world.